Hi, my name is Tricia McGrath of the Silver Lake History Collective, and this is October 18th, 2023, and I'm here interviewing Charles Fleming, a longtime Silver Lake resident, and our cameraman doing audio and video is Koi Fun. Thank you so much. So the first thing I want to ask is, like, where were you born? Was it in? It was. You didn't.
Not at all.
You didn't grow up in Silver Lake.
No, I didn't even grow up in Los Angeles, really. I was born in North Carolina, in western North Carolina, in the mountains, in the Appalachians. My father was a journalist, and so jobs took him from one place to another. So we were there, we were in Atlanta, we were in Houston, and ultimately we wound up in Los Angeles. And by the time I was in junior high school, I was a kid from Pacific Palisades with bleach blonde hair and a surfboard who didn't want to go to school anymore, who wanted to smoke marijuana, chase girls, and ride the waves.
Did you graduate from Paul Revere?
I went to Paul Revere. I went 1 year to Marquez High School, then I went to Paul Revere High School, then I went to Palisades, Paul Revere Junior High School, I should say,
yeah.
Then Palisades High School, and graduated. I don't know. I'm not sure why. I don't think they wanted to graduate me, but they did. And then I went away for college a little bit, and then I went to UCLA and finished there. So my education, or my lack of education, is all pretty much local.
So after UCLA, did you knock on doors? Did you? Because I know there's from UCLA. You worked at the LA Times for 8 years.
So many years.
There.
So many years in between there. A very motley spotted career. I was
kind of a Renaissance man.
Oh, nothing of the sort. Nothing of the sort. Just a failure in many areas would be more accurate. I was writing the Great American Novel, and I did many of them. In fact, I was the only one who had that particular feeling about them being the Great American Novel. But I did that for many years, and then did all the stupid jobs that one does in order to do that. I was a taxi driver, I worked in construction, I was a waiter, I was a bartender, I was a sommelier, all those part-time jobs that made it possible for me to, have some time to myself to write books. And I did that for a while, got absolutely nowhere with it, took up the teaching of English as a second language as a more respectable job to do while I was writing. One thing and another, that led to Japan. I lived in Japan for 3 years, and that's where I started practicing my family trade. I became a working journalist, first for magazines. I came back here eventually. My wife and I got married, moved officially, and bought a house in Silver Lake. That was our first house together. I had lived here, off and on before that, but we got a house together here in Silver Lake and commenced to have children here in Silver Lake. And I worked then at the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner for a while. I worked for Variety newspaper for a while. I worked at Newsweek magazine for a while. And by then I decided it was time to go back to writing books, so I went back to writing books and published 12 or 14 books over the next 15 years. Okay. And then wound up, as you know, at the LA Times, did some freelancing for them, was hired, and then worked there until the year that I retired in 2018. So I worked all over.
All over the place.
Yeah, the guy that couldn't keep a job, that's what it really
But you saw your dad writing stuff. He was a journalist in North Carolina. Right?
Yeah, and Atlanta and Houston.
Atlanta and Houston, and then all the way out to California.
Yeah. That was very much the milieu that I grew up in. My mother had been a radio journalist. When my father remarried, he remarried a journalist.
Oh my God.
The house was filled with not just journalists, a lot of journalists, but also a terrific number of very, very interesting people. My father was one of the lead reporters on the early civil rights movement. He and another guy were the only white reporters who would go into these little towns and try to tell the truth about a church bombing or a lynching or a march that the police had broken up. So Martin Luther King was at my dinner table, and Medgar Evers was at my dinner table, and people like that, Julian Bond. So I met a lot of fascinating people, and had an idea of what the job of being a journalist was from being around these people and listening to them talk shop and talk about the essential principles of being a journalist: accuracy, fairness, hitting your deadline. That sort of stuff was sort of ingrained in me, even though, like most kids, I was like, that's the family business. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do something better.
So you're kind of rebellious.
Of
wanted
course.
to do a novel thing.
Yeah, of course. It had to be different. Had to
But
be
at
different.
least it was writing.
Well, it was writing, and it was writing that I got paid for. And it turned out that it was writing that other people thought I was good at. So they kept hiring me and promoting me and paying me. And maybe I wasn't, I mean, I ultimately did publish multiple novels and multiple nonfiction books. So it was just maybe a question of me getting a proper training the old-fashioned way by having to write 4 newspaper stories a day on a beat for the LA Herald Examiner kind of thing.
And that was before you got into the Herald Examiner, the writing.
I had started doing the writing on my own, and then when I went to, what happened really was when I went to Japan, I was fascinated by everything, and I was working at a university, so I had a fair amount of free time on my hands, so I did the journalist thing. I thought, I really want to find out about Japanese motorcycle gangs. So what's the best way to find out? Get someone to pay you to write a story about it. So I would get an assignment and then go in and start, learning about Japanese motorcycle gangs, or about the Yakuza, or about models, American models living in Japan, and the bizarre sorts of lives that they live in Tokyo, things like that. So that by the time I came back from Japan, I knew I didn't want to teach anymore. I knew I wanted to do this reporting thing. And the first job that I got was at the Herald Examiner, which was a fantastic place to be a young reporter.
Were you there when they closed? Or
Oh yeah, yeah, the day
was
that
it
they
sad?
closed. It was more than sad. I was recently married. I had recently bought a house, and my wife was 8.5 months pregnant.
Oh.
So here we both were
bad.
out of work with no idea how we were going to continue to pay for our little house on Edgecliff, right down the hill from here, in what I guess these days people refer to it as Baja Silver Lake, on the other side of Sunset, as if somehow it were beneath up a hill here. Somehow we are Alta Silver Lake and they are Baja.
Right, yeah.
So yeah, it was tragic. It was scary. It was freaky. It was like, what in the world are we gonna do?
What year did they close?
That was 1989.
Was it that recent?
Halloween Day of 1989.
Wow.
October 31st was the last, or maybe November 1st, I'll have to look, was the last edition. I mean, they came in and they said, we're closing.
I think
Today-
I actually have a copy.
Today's
of the last
edition will be the last one. It'll be printed in the morning and that's the
Did they
end.
give you a notice?
Oh, heck no.
Just that day?
That day, yeah. Absolutely. We were a Hearst paper and the Hearst organization had decided we've lost too much money for too long here and we're pulling the plug.
You're out of there.
Why they didn't give us a little more notice, I don't know.
Yeah.
So everybody was scrambling,
Yeah.
which made it very hard to get a job because everybody was looking for a
Not
job.
gonna know.
We all lived here, people had houses here, they couldn't just say, well, I know, I'll look for a job in New York, that was not good for them, so. Yeah, so it was an interesting time, and we
Yeah.
got through it just fine, and I ended up turning this way and getting that job, and that led to the other job, which led to this, and so it all worked out fine in the end. It was just a little scary. Right in the beginning.
89 in Silver Lake, that was the cocaine period of Silver Lake.
It was ending.
They had like ending.
It was
because they
Silver
had like
Lake-
guardian angels. I remember the Silver Lake Improvement Association were supporting guardian angels to block off like the dealers or something, to go after the dealers and stuff.
I don't know about that, I don't remember that part, but it was
In the
definitely,
80s.
when we first said we were moving to Silver Lake, everyone we knew said one of two things. Either they said, Silver Lake, now where is that, up by Big Bear? Where is that?
There is a Silver
We
Lake.
would say, no, it's east of Hollywood, it's between Hollywood and Echo Park. And they would then say, what's Echo Park? So these West Siders, they don't know anything. Or they would say, wow, we're
Really?
moving to, is that safe?
Right.
Because there was a lot of drive-by shootings, there was a lot of gang activity, a lot of violence, a lot of tagging, a lot of stuff that people were scared of. And honestly, we wouldn't have moved to Silver Lake had we been able to afford something further west. This is where we came because this is the place that had not been gentrified. The houses were less expensive, the lifestyle was less expensive. It was also edgier and artier and
A lot of
weirder.
artists.
It was very weird. Silver Lake was
There were
weird.
homosexuals. Any idea of gay people or?
Oh, no, it was very
It was
gay.
never. It was very gay.
Oh, heavens, yes. I mean,
By the 80s.
from
Because we had
from the time of the
Silver
Black,
Lake Street Fair.
well, the time of the
Was
Black
that-
Cat riots. I mean,
Yeah.
there are people who believe, there are historians who believe that the Mattachine Society and the Black Cat riots, that's really the nascence of the entire gay rights movement happened right here in California, right here in Los Angeles, right here in Silver Lake.
Here at Silver Lake.
Anyway, it was a fascinating place. There were bizarre shops and bizarre people on the streets, very, very colorful. It was very mixed, a lot more
Diverse.
Black and brown and yellow and white and much more diverse than it became
No
later.
yuppies?
Not yet.
Not
I guess
yuppies?
that was me.
You were the first yuppie.
We were the yuppies. We were the people who were coming in to ruin everything. And I guess we did. I guess we did, because we didn't feel like we were the beginning of a wave, and surely, we didn't know nobody followed us here. We didn't know anybody who came to our house and said, "This is awesome, I'm moving to Silver Lake."
Right.
So the wave, it wasn't much of a wave. It was a very small trickle of interest that we saw around us, and the
Even in
change was very, 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 very
Gradual.
gradual. I remember a friend who had lived in Silver Lake a long time. He called me on the phone one day, disgust in his voice, and he said, "Well, it's over. The yuppies are here." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Drive down to the corner, the bakery that's at the corner. Just look at what's in the window. I'm finished with this damn place." So I drove down there, and what was in the window? A sign that said, "Croissants, $1." And he was like, "Croissants? We don't have croissants in Silver Lake. What is this, Westwood?" He was outraged. And we both continued to live here for many more years. But, like downtown, the change was very, very gradual. Sort of one store closing, you'd hear about a house price and you would say, "Really? That's awfully high. $210,000? That's awfully high." But very, very gradual. Very, very, almost like you couldn't. And then, as usually happens, suddenly it all accumulated. And suddenly Tartine is moving in, and Intelligentsia is here, and house prices have gone through the roof, and the end of it seemed, well, I don't know if it's the end, but...
Well, it was the 40-year period from 89 to 19, is 40 years, right, I guess?
I think that's 30 years, but...
30 years?
But in any
Okay,
case.
so I started before 89, but it was very artsy before that, and very low income, and it was like if you couldn't find a place anywhere else, you'd move to Silver Lake.
Yeah.
And then, but it was cool, It was a lot of different kinds of people, and then somehow more and more people started hearing about it. I think they had the Silver Lake Fair.
Absolutely, the Silver Lake
And
Street
they
Fair
shut
was...
off Sunset Boulevard for what, 20 years? 10 years?
I don't remember
They
how long.
stopped an artery.
It had been happening
Actual
before, it was happening before we moved here, I think.
Really?
So it had already
Okay.
begun in '89, and
Right.
it was magnificent.
Yeah, they had
It was
stages,
magnificent.
we had the OJs.
And,
It was a gay parade, but it was a family parade.
all manner of people.
Everybody came.
I think it's part of the reason that my children grew up with such incredibly open-minded and liberal attitudes about other humans. Because from the time they were 2 and 3 and 4, we were going to the Silver Lake Fair, and they were seeing men that looked like women, women that looked like men, people that you weren't quite sure, fat people, small people, black people, brown, like
Yeah,
everything.
Everybody.
Everyone
All the
was there.
families went.
And families.
Yeah,
Our family.
our family went.
So, I think that was part of, I know now they say they were very happy to have grown up in Silver Lake.
And
They
you
love
had,
Silver
how many
Lake.
brothers and sisters did you have?
I had 3 younger brothers,
Okay.
none of whom ever came anywhere near Silver Lake. They were like, that East Side stuff. They were all West Side guys. And then when my wife and I began to have children, we had 2 daughters, so no boys in this house. It was 2 daughters.
I had 2 daughters.
Who were born in '89 and '91. And who are now back in Los Angeles after living far away, but they loved growing up in Silver Lake, loved it. And part of what they loved was what we're talking about, the diversity, the variety of people here, the variety of artistic expression here, so much interest in music, so much interest in art, a lot of people creating things, not working at movie studios, which is what seems to be the case these days.
Do you think that it's progressed to artistic, but on a larger level, like Bono or people that are directors that work at Warner Brothers, they rent houses, or people
Well,
that are...
we know that something like that, we know that something like that has happened. I don't think there are very many artists living in my neighborhood. And the reason that I think that is you know, when we moved in here, some of the houses had a minivan in front, and some of them had an old beat-up Volvo in front, or a beat-up Saab, or Subaru, or Volkswagen
Yeah.
Bug. You know, the kinds of cars that people drive when they don't have a lot of money, and they probably don't care
Yeah.
very much.
There were
How
quite a
they
few
look.
beaters around, up until about 20 years
You
ago.
know, I walk every day with the dogs. It's nothing but Teslas and Range Rovers and BMWs. It's like,
It was about 10 years ago, 15 years ago that started.
it all has been just
Gradually,
so
and then it
gradual.
crested, didn't it?
Well, I don't know, has it crested? I don't
Well,
know.
I don't know if it's peaked, but it crested, got up there.
Yeah.
Boy, and then.
I still think it's a magnificent place to live.
Right.
I still think it's a wonderful place to live. I love this house, I love this street, I have great neighbors. We've
It's still
always-
diverse.
It's still diverse. I mean, the people that live on this street, immediate people who live in this street, they do every variety of thing. There's an actor and a filmmaker, there's a director, there's a producer, a television, TV commercial producer from England next door. We have Canadians up the street, we have Australians up the street, 2 people from New Zealand. I don't know why everybody's British or British speaking on this block, but a guy who lives over here, he's the great clothing puppet maker,
Oh my
or
God.
puppet clothing maker of the entire universe. Like, he's the #1 dude that you go to. So there are still some really interesting people who do quirky things, but those are the people that have lived here, you know, a long time. All those people that I'm mentioning, most of them moved in when we did, which is in the very early 90s. So
And then there was Dr. Williams over here, I was Mitchell Turner, I don't know if you knew
I
him.
didn't know him, but I've
He
heard
said,
of him.
he interviewed him, and years ago when I interviewed him, he said, you know, I'm afraid the yuppies are coming. And then Manuel Rosales, who built Disney Oregon, lives right here.
Yep, it's just down the street from me.
So they're longtime residents, but I think that the diversity is here, but you see a lot more pink people, a lot more white people.
Mhm.
And then the schools are closing at the same time, there's an
Although,
economic thing.
I will tell you, I don't know what's going on with very modern Silver Lake, but I walk to Sunset Boulevard with the dog 4 or 5 afternoons of the week, because that's where he likes to go. He loves to go down to Sunset and walk and look at all the people. It is so blacker and browner and yellower now over the last 2 years, maybe
Yes.
since the pandemic, notably different. And I'm not sure, you know, I don't go down the street saying, hey, do you live here? Or hey, where do you come from? I don't know how many of them live in this neighborhood or just are attracted to this neighborhood because it's a cool place to be, but it is markedly different over the last couple of years. And terrific, because that's what we need. That's what we need. I mean, the variety of Los Angeles is what makes it exciting. And, you know, what's always troubled me about Los Angeles, everybody talks about the diversity here. What's always troubled me about the diversity here is the diversity seems to exist largely, historically, in pockets. So here's how many black people there are here, but they kind of live over here. And here's a huge Asian community, but they're all kind of over there. And, you know, here's the gay community, but they're, you know, kind of much in West Hollywood. You know, there's not a tremendous amount of mixing the way that there is in other cities. You know, famously, we're how many suburbs in search of a city, the cliche about what Los Angeles is. But one of the reasons that I think we have road rage, one of the reasons I think we don't get along very well, and the reason that we don't mix is there's no public space where everybody has to learn to get along. There is no Central Park. There is no downtown. There is
Main
no
Street.
mass transit where everybody's got to rub shoulders with everybody else, which means everybody gets the opportunity to find out, well, that's
They're
not a
another
problem.
person.
He's just a guy, she's just a woman, it doesn't matter. I mean, we're just
Right.
riding on the bus together, and obviously the color thing doesn't mean anything, because we're just people riding on the bus together, or hanging out in the park together, or all going to an outdoor concert together. I thought that some of that might happen with Grand Park, when they built Grand Park downtown. I don't know, I'm not sure.
Now they have the big condos across from the Disney Hall, and
Yes,
those are
that's
unaffordable.
a whole other transformation.
Which
That's
is
a whole other
unbelievable.
transformation.
Yeah.
But, you know, the community here it's had an immense impact on me personally in a way that I don't know if I had moved to West Hollywood, if I had moved to Culver City, if I moved to Redondo Beach, I don't know that I would be as,
Well-rounded.
we wouldn't be talking. Because what happened for me was, and I think we've talked about this, in about 2000, I started having a really bad health run.
Okay.
Just one thing after another. I had to have a hip replacement. I had to have another hip replacement. I had a broken leg. I had a
Run of health
so
issues.
this terrible bad run of health, which, you know, and you know, just an accident and a fall, and this broke, and I was in the hospital. I mean, just a long run of stupid stuff.
When was that?
Then in 2003 or 4 maybe, I had a spinal surgery that went sort of okay. But a year later, I had to have another one, more or less in the same place. It went okay. But spinal surgery, you know, it's kind of a big deal. It's, the recovery and the rehab from it are unpleasant and you know, slow. And the next year, the doctor said we got to go back in. And you know, I couldn't take it. I couldn't face it.
You
I
get
just couldn't
traumatized
do
by
it.
too many surgeries.
So I said to the doctor, I can't do it. I'm not going to show up. I'm sure you're right. I'm sure I'm going to have the operation sooner or later, but I can't do it now.
Forget about
I'm
it.
just too tired.
Yeah.
I'm going to try this other thing. And the other thing was, I had found that if I could get up and just get moving a little, that relieved some of the pain in my back. So I decided I'm going to lean in that direction. I'm just going to start trying to walk a little more and see what happens. So my wife drove me down to Griffith Park Boulevard where it was flat, and I walked a block. And that was sort of okay, and she brought me home. And then the next day I walked 3 blocks, 4 blocks, and the next day I walked a little more. And the result of all of this was I ended up, because I'm not really an exerciser, I like games and I like sports, I don't exercise, I hate exercising. And I knew that I needed a gimmick to convince me, to force me to keep walking. Because the more I walked, the better I felt. And the more I was like, I felt like I might be forestalling this operation another year if I could just keep walking. So I decided I'm gonna find all the public staircases in Silver Lake. Because I knew there were some here, there were some there. I lived on Loma Vista in a house for a little while. There was one there. But I didn't really know what they were, and I didn't know where they went. I didn't really know what they were for, but I knew there were some of them, so I decided I'm going to try to find all of them in Silver Lake. And there's probably 15 or 20 of them, maybe some I don't know about. And I'm going to make that my quest. I'm going to make these little circular walks where I will find this one and go over there and
Esther's
go down
steps,
that
down
one.
Lucille.
And by the time I finished, 2 things happened. One, there were 50 staircases, not 15, and I had gotten kind of interested in this. It was fun for me. I felt like I was like Magellan or something, like looking for the Northwest Passage, you know, just walk here, go down to this street, oh, it's a dead end, come back the other way, oh, look, there's another staircase, how do you get to it? So
And they were built by the city in, what, the 20s?
well, all the way back to the turn of the century for
To the
some of them,
1900s.
some of the wooden ones.
For the red car, right?
Well, the concept at work was that when they started building houses on your street, and on my street, and on other even steeper streets, Mount Washington, Echo Park, etc., they were building houses to sell to families that didn't have 2 cars.
Right.
They might not even have 1 car.
Right.
So it didn't make any sense to have the person that lived up here have to go the curvy way, which is, you know, the cars weren't going to go straight up the hill, right? So the curvy way down to, you know, to this elementary school or to the market or the church or the post office or whatever. So they built these staircases as sort of shortcuts for pedestrians. And, you know, by the time I started walking the steps, they weren't being used for that anymore. They weren't being used for anything. Many of them were in terrible disrepair. They were overgrown, they were underlighted, they were filled with trash. They were just, many of them were just a mess. And nobody was using them really for transportation. But I sort of turned them into these urban trails. And so the first thing that happened was I started really walking and really exploring the city. The second thing that happened was I started really falling in love with Silver Lake in a whole new way. Really seeing the architecture, really seeing the variety of trees and flowers that are grown here. Learning about the history, because, you know, I'd be walking and somebody would be in his front yard and I'd say, how are you today? I'm, oh goodness, you know, what a beautiful house this is. And he would tell me who the architect was. Or I would say, this is such an interesting house, I've never noticed it before. And he said, well, you know who lived here, don't you? Or who died here, or who worked here, or who whatever. And so I was learning all this interesting stuff. And the third thing that happened was, people started seeing me, and they would say, what are you doing out there? Like, I see you all the time, what are you, and I'm like, it's this walking, these stairs, and people said, well, that's interesting. What do you mean stairs? Where are they? And they asked if they could come with me. So I started leading these walks. Go out with 4 people, 5 people, my wife and I, and a couple of people, maybe my daughters. And people were just so fascinated by it. And I just kept thinking, they're just stairs. Like, it's not that interesting, really. But they thought it was really interesting. And finally somebody said, you write books. Why isn't this a book? And I said, a book? What? About the stairs of Silver Lake? And they said, well, no, stairs of Silver Lake, Echo Park, Mount Washington. I had found stairs in Hollywood by then, Los Feliz. They said, this is so cool. And I thought, yeah, but like 5 people care about it. But this is what I do for a living. And I'd already kind of built a lot of the walking routes, so it was a pretty simple matter to put together a book proposal. You know, here's my map, here are the stairs, you start here, you go there, you see this, you learn that. And I pitched it to a couple of publishers. The first 2 or 3 said, why would we do a book like this? And I'm like, yeah, exactly. Why would you do a book like this? But Santa Monica Press, the publisher there said, this is interesting. Tell me more. And the result of that, of course, was Secret Stairs, which was published in 2010. The week or 2 before it was published, I said to my publisher, diminish your expectations, please, because nobody needs this book. It's a nice thing, it's a nice little legacy that we'll give to the people of Los Angeles and all 60 people who will buy a copy, because nobody cares. It's just this funky little, quirky little thing. And he said, I don't know, I got a feeling. And he was right, because the book started selling well. It has always sold well. It continues to sell well. Secret Stairs we did first. The publisher said, this is great, let's do another book with all the other stairs. And I said, well, there aren't any other stairs. I put them all in the first book. And he said, oh, because we have to do another book. People love this stuff. And so the long and short of that was we did a book called Secret Stairs East Bay, which was the book that did for Berkeley and Oakland and those areas what Secret Stairs had done for Silver Lake and Echo Park.
Did they have red cars too?
They sure did. They sure did. In
Was
fact,
it the same political get rid of the red car?
in fact, a lot of those people went to trial and some of them went to jail for it. They were much more overt about taking apart what was called, they didn't call it the red car, it was called the key system. And they were much more overt about it than...
Getting rid of it.
Yeah.
And
And they got caught with their hands in the cookie jar. And a lot
But
of
it was Goodyear and Firestone Tire, was that anything to do with it? Or was it buses?
They
Was
were
it metro? Was it
landowners,
cars?
they had investments
It
in
was
car
other
companies.
transportations, cars.
They were making money. They weren't interested in changing the city for the better. They were interested in lining their pockets, and this was a way to do it.
And that was through another mode of transportation other than the red car, which namely would be buses, cars, trucks,
Yeah, things that burn gas, things that pollute
Barts.
the air,
barts.
things that require massive highways.
Metros?
And billions of parking lots, and et cetera, et cetera.
But didn't the red cars need a highway? They had little trails,
Well, they went on
had
their
little
tracks,
electric tracks.
but, you know, it was 6 cars at a time, a lot of people in that one little car. And they were powered by electricity, most of them, not by, they weren't polluting the way the cars are polluting, or were polluting. Anyway, then we did another book. I got, Secret Stairs took off, and all these people were like, oh my God, I love your book so much, but you know, I have bad knees. Or, I walk with my mom and she's too old for the stairs. So I thought, well, let's do another book like Secret Stairs, but without the stairs. We'll just do really interesting, fun places to walk. Places that, you know, maybe that people don't know about, that are really fun to walk. Places where there's a lake that you didn't know was there, or there's a building that's fascinating, or there's a neighborhood that you've never been in. And,
This is all LA, right?
well, Secret Stairs and Secret Walks are all LA, yes.
Okay.
All parts of LA.
Parts of
I mean, Secret Stairs, there's stairs in Pacific Palisades, stairs in Pasadena,
Okay.
Eagle Rock, Mount
But
Washington,
it covers
Lincoln Heights.
the red car system,
Well, that's where the stairs tend to be,
right?
is near where there was a red car line, where they really needed, and when I was looking for the stairs, I would look at maps and I would think, okay, so where's there a transportation corridor next to steep hills in an area that was developed in the teens and 20s?
Right.
Because that was sort of the heyday of this.
Right.
Neighborhoods that were built later, you know, where I grew up in Pacific Palisades, there's some pretty steep streets. But they weren't building any
stairs.
staircases, because by then, we were a car
You got
society.
the Model T.
Everybody had cars by then. Really after the war, this became really a car city.
Do you think Silver Lake was an older neighborhood from downtown Los Angeles because of maybe the Alvera Street was the first beginning of Los Angeles in a way?
Well, it
Silver Lake
just
was very
started,
close to Alvera.
it started to spread out, you know. They used the flat areas first. So central Los Angeles and the West Adams district and that area down, you know, Compton, all the way down there, that was the area that developed first. But a lot of this area, there's a guy who has a hunting lodge over here. It was literally a hunting lodge. They would come up here when this was all just, you know, sagebrush and oak trees.
There were deer.
They would come up here, they would come up and hunt deer.
Griffith Park.
Absolutely. Well, this, I'm talking about before there was a Griffith Park, like when this was all, you know, when Hollywood had not been built yet, that was all just orange groves, etc. So they started pushing out, more and more residents are coming, soon the train comes here, soon the port is being built, which was a big, big deal in the growth of the city. Soon Mulholland has figured out how to bring water,
And Greystone.
and water makes power.
Greystone, yeah.
So that made possible a growth in the city of Los Angeles that couldn't have happened without that much water and that much water to drive hydroelectric power, which was a really big deal. Enough electricity to support
Are you
a
talking
growing
about
city.
the Mulholland?
Yeah.
1913.
Yeah, yeah. So they needed places to build houses and they had hills. So, all right then, we'll cut a street that goes kind of like this up the hill and we'll up. This house is one, your house is one.
This one was 1922.
22, yeah.
Mine was 14, and I have one that's 1908,
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, there's some very old
And
houses.
during 1908, there's a gun closet in there, a secret gun closet for shooting the deer
Wow.
in the 1908 house.
Or maybe there was a gangster in that house.
Maybe it was part of the mob, but it's in there. So, but,
Yeah, it's, I mean, the history around here is fascinating. The place where the Paramore is now,
yeah,
up at the top of the hill, which, you know, at one point was,
a convent
well, it was a convent. Before that, it was a very wealthy person's home. The silent
Moreno?
film star
Moreno's
Moreno
family?
lived there.
I think
Before that-
she gave it to the Catholic Church for $1.
Ultimately, the
nuns
Catholic
moved in,
Church got
And
it.
then they would take care of the girls from juvenile hall. They actually graduated high school girls. They would live there. Because I used to, they used to babysit for me, the girls. And
Fascinating.
then they got tired of walking up the hill. They said, well, we better sell it and get I think they sold it and got a child care place in the valley to the woman that owns it now.
Right. Who has been trying to turn it into something else. But before that, way before that, it was a military outpost for Generalissimo Pio Pico,
Really?
who became the first, what did he become, the first mayor of Los
Is
Angeles?
that why
or the
there's
first-
so many outbuildings and that
I don't know
estate?
who
There's
built those
several
buildings.
outbuildings there.
But there's interesting history on this hill. I found somewhere a newspaper story about Mitchell Terrena. It was so steep that they used to do car tests to see how fast they could get up to what speed they could get up to going up the hill. And there was a story about a new record being set by a Packard or a Lincoln or something. It was going 22 miles an hour when it got to the top of the hill, which was a big deal for those cars up that really steep hill.
There, years
So-
ago, in the LA Times, there was an article at the bottom of Mitchell Terrena where a car hit a wagon that was horse-driven. So it was right at that time when they were changing over,
Wow.
that the horse-driven wagon had interfered with the car, and that was the end of horse-driven wagons. You know?
Yeah.
But, yeah, Mitchell Terrena got to be so steep that, I know Fast and Furious was filmed on Mitchell Terrena.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, in front of my house, in fact.
It's unusual, you know, in Silver Lake, in Echo Park, famously, there are some streets like Fargo and Baxter,
Yeah.
but they're just, they're
They're
short
short.
streets and the steep parts are short. Mitchell-Torena is rather odd because it's just one big, long, straight street way up to the top of the
The
hill.
joke was you could take a bowling ball on the top of the Merino estate and it'd be going 1,000 miles an hour by the time it got to Silver Lake Boulevard.
Well, I've seen some young people on skateboards doing
Skateboards.
that, and it looks like, how in the world
How
are they
they
not gonna
survive.
wind up, in Bellevue Park or something? Fly all the way down there.
So where was your interest in motorcycles? Was that from Japan when you were?
No, that
Was
was
that way
from-
before?
That was way before. When I was a kid, when I was living in Marquez Knolls, it was the Palisades, some rich kid on the block had a mini bike and he was always tearing up and down the street, and finally I convinced him to let me ride it, and I fell in love.
With mini bike?
Immediately. That
And those were
feeling-
gas run mini
Oh, yeah.
bikes.
Oh, yeah. It was basically a lawnmower motor that had been put
One
inside a
horsepower
thing with some wheels on
or
it.
two, yeah.
And I just thought it was thrilling, it made a lot of noise,
Yeah.
it went really fast, you felt like, as close as I had ever felt to something like flying, and I never looked back.
Well, you weren't allowed to drive it on the sidewalk, only on the road, but they did on the sidewalks.
We rode
Everywhere.
anywhere we could,
Anywhere.
off-road, on-road, sidewalk, parking lot.
So-
We used to break into schools and ride around
Parking.
on the blacktops.
So it's in your DNA.
Well,
Your
My father wasn't particularly interested in motorcycles, but one of my brothers and I just got the bug. My next youngest brother and I got the bug, and we've always owned motorcycles. We've always
Wow.
ridden in the desert a lot. When I was a teenager, we used to ride out in the Antelope Valley, spend whole weeks out there when the weather was cool and it was nice.
I thought I saw you recently out there,
Quite possibly, yeah.
like a couple of years ago,
Oh, I was there a couple of months ago.
a couple of months ago.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm still doing
But
it.
not Antelope Valley, it was more like Mojave or something.
All
Everywhere.
over. I mean, I've ridden in Europe, I've ridden in the Far East, I've ridden in South America,
I saw you
Latin
on a,
America, Alaska.
I saw you on a bike in Portugal, was it Portugal?
No.
What,
I've never-
recently?
I've never ridden in Portugal.
But on a bike, where were you? Were you in Switzerland?
I might have been in Colombia.
No, a couple of
I
weeks
might have been
ago.
in Iceland.
A couple of weeks ago,
No,
months
on a bicycle?
on a bicycle.
Oh, I was in Vermont,
Vermont.
up by the Canadian border. That's
Yeah.
right, I was on a bicycle. I do a little bit of bicycling, not so much. I'm more of a motorcycle.
What were you doing in Vermont on a bicycle?
We went to look at the fall foliage.
Oh, fantastic.
My wife and I did a house exchange,
Yeah.
we've talked about house
Yeah.
exchanges. They wanted to come here where it was nice and warm, and we wanted to go there where it was nice and cool, because we were sick of the heat.
Oh, I've got a grandson in New Hampshire, that's why.
Beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful. I just saw
And
something that said
Bikes are
that
a good idea,
that's
I never
the,
thought of it.
that's the number one best state to move to if you're leaving Southern California, according to some
Hampshire?
study that I just saw.
New Hampshire.
Yeah, Washington's also good, Montana's also good, Idaho is also good, Michigan is also good,
But New
according to someone,
Hampshire is
according to
so
someone's study.
beautiful.
Very beautiful. A
Yeah.
little bit cold in the winter for me,
Yeah, me too.
but then, then you come to California, you do a house exchange and you come to California. That's-
I love being a leafer peeper.
Yeah.
That's what they call us.
Yeah.
Leafer peepers.
Yeah.
So you ride bikes here? You don't ride bikes here because
Not
it's too
bicycles,
steep.
not bicycles so much.
But you have do you have a motorcycle?
Oh, I have a whole garage
Oh,
full
you
of
do?
them, yeah.
I won't tell anybody. That's cool. Then you could just put them in your truck, take them anywhere. right?
Well, I ride from here. I rode out this morning. I rode for 2 hours this morning up in the Angeles Crest area.
Wow.
Preparatory to, I'm going to Japan in a couple of days and I'm gonna ride there for 2 weeks. So I wanted to test some new gear and make sure everything fit properly. So I went out today. It's fantastic. And that's, again, one of the great things about Silver Lake. Because we are where we are geographically, you don't have to go very far to be out in, kind of in wilderness.
Yeah.
If you live in Westwood, that's not the case. If you live in, if you live in Redondo Beach, you can go to the beach,
Yeah.
but, to get to the mountains, to get to some place where it's cold, or where there's beautiful windy roads that are so much fun for motorcycling, that's a bit of a hike. Here, you get on the 2 freeway and go up to the 210 and you're out in the middle of
You're in
nowhere.
Angeles Crest. Or, you're a couple hours from Big Bear. There's snow.
I've ridden to Big Bear many a
Yeah,
time.
yeah, because I saw you in Big Bear.
Snowboarded in Big Bear,
Yeah,
yeah.
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 So that's really cool. But when you left the LA Times, and I know we stopped there, but then you went to the Los Angeles Herald when that ended, and then you ended up going to Edgecliff. You moved from there to here, right?
No, I was living in Hollywood when I
Okay.
got the job
Okay.
at the LA Herald Examiner, and my wife and I had saved a lot of money working hard in Japan, and so we were looking for a house, and we found this absolutely adorable, it was 1910, Craftsman, down the hill from here. Needed a lot of work. We had a lot of sweat equity to put into it, but we were young and fit, and why not? And we moved in. Very quickly got married, very quickly got pregnant. I was working then at the LA Herald. I worked there about 2.5 years until the day it closed. And suddenly, you know, my wife, who was teaching in the LA Unified School District, which she would go on to do for the next 35 years, you know, she wasn't working because she was 8.5, 9 months pregnant, and our first child was on the way. Our first child, our first house. Now we're both out of work. What in the world are we going to do? We've got a mortgage. So I scrambled around, and the best job that I could find, which turned out to be a fantastic job, was working at the entertainment publication Variety. I had been covering, just by accident, I was covering the entertainment industry at the Herald. And the only reason I say by accident, when I went in there to interview, the people that interviewed me said, "We don't really have anything." "Well, we don't have anything for you." And I said, well, you paused though. "What do you mean?" They said, "Oh, well, we've got this job. We've been trying to fill it forever. We need an entertainment industry business reporter."
Right.
Somebody who can write about, not about the celebrities, not reviewing movies, but the business of Hollywood. "You wouldn't want to do that, would you?" And I said, "Oh, I'm fascinated by that," which was absolutely untrue. I had no idea what I was getting into, but I needed a job.
No clue.
I really wanted a job. So I got hired to do that, and that ended up being the track that I was on for the next 15 years. That's what I did there, and then I went to work at Variety, and I wrote about the movie studios principally. Then I went to work after that at Newsweek magazine, and I covered mostly the movie studios, and by then it was the whole thing, so the music industry and the television industry. When I left there, I wrote principally for Vanity Fair. I wrote a lot of cover stories for Vanity Fair about, again, the titans, the sort of the Barry Dillers and the David Geffens, the sort of the big people of the entertainment industry at that time. My first book was a book about a Hollywood character, a Hollywood person, my first nonfiction book.
Who was it about?
It was about a fellow named Don Simpson,
Oh.
who was sort of the black prince of Hollywood at that time. He had been terribly successful with a partner named Jerry Bruckheimer. They had started out with a movie called Flashdance, and then they had moved forward to Days of Thunder and Bad Boys and The Rock and one more blockbuster movie after another, Beverly Hills Cop, Bad Boys, like they just, one giant movie after another. And as their career got bigger, he got darker. And the drug use and the drinking and the plastic surgery and the hookers and the fast cars and the legal trouble all finally caught up with him and killed him. So I wrote a book about him, but more a biography of Hollywood during that time, during that crazy 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s time when Hollywood, you know, exploded and it kind of lost its mind. You know, it was a very wild place to be during that period. A lot of wild characters, a lot of wild money, a lot of criminal behavior.
Yeah.
It's called High Concept.
And then you went you were from Variety, you went to Newsweek, and then Vanity Fair, and then to the LA Times?
Well, much later.
Later.
By then we had moved here. We moved to this house in about
Okay.
1990, late 1991, I guess. I may not have that right, but we moved here.
But you were there in '89.
By then, I was there in '89 for the earthquake, which just about knocked our house over. We had to do a lot of FEMA-assisted, thank you FEMA,
Thank you.
FEMA-assisted rebuilding there. And then my wife found this house. We had a second child by then, and
Perfect.
there had been a lot of crime around us on Edgecliff. We had not been hit by anything, but a lot of car break-ins and a lot of garages broken into and a lot of houses, you know, a couple of purse snatchings, a couple of robberies, and we just felt a little exposed now with 2 kids. So we wanted something a little higher up. where the sort of the foot traffic, target of opportunity, criminal stuff wouldn't be going on so much, or
Right.
but. So we bought this house, and by then I had, well, shortly after that I left Newsweek and I started writing that book, and I liked that, so I didn't get another job for the longest time. I didn't have a job from 1997 until 2011. I just worked here. There's a little, used to be a guest house. I turned that into my office up behind the swimming pool, and that was my place of employment. All I did was I wrote books and magazine articles and so on. So I was a very happy freelance guy. I got to
You
be
had an ADU before they were popular.
before they were popular. My kids were by then now going to school. They went to LA Family School. It was their, down on Griffith Park Boulevard. That was their preschool, where we met people that, we're still friendly with today, the parents of the children that they played around with. And now those have been our friends now for 30 years. When they left there, they went over to, I've just lost the name of it. What in the world is the name of
Not
their?
the one on Rowena.
Yes.
Ivanhoe?
Ivanhoe,
Yeah.
thank you. They moved to Ivanhoe School and were there for their elementary school years. And I was able to, and then eventually we left there and they started going to the highly gifted magnet program in Eagle Rock. So I was Mr. Ma. My wife was working a full schedule as a teacher and I was working at home. So I had this remarkable
Fantastic.
opportunity to be with my kids a lot, driving them to school every morning, picking them up most afternoons. I did most of the cooking. I learned to bake bread. I learned to be a really good cook. Ultimately sold a cookbook out of that experience, and really got to have a real opportunity a kind of opportunity that my father certainly didn't have, to be close to his children when they were little and be around and involved in their childhood in a really
So you ended
serious
up
way.
with the LA Times for 8 years, 7 years.
2011 to 2018, 7 years, yeah.
And did you write entertainment stuff?
I was hired there to be an editor in the calendar section for a division that at that time they called Company Town, and that was the group that did the business side of Hollywood. We didn't review movies and we didn't
So it was
interview
along the same
directors.
theme.
We wrote about the business of Hollywood, which
So
was
cool.
a very, very big business here, right? Massive amounts of employment, massive amounts of revenue, a huge domestic
What do
product.
you think of the SAG and the SAG strike or the
Well,
writer's strike?
this is a fascinating and complicated. I covered the 1988 writers' strike,
That's what I was thinking.
and that was a much simpler matter
Was it?
because that was really, it was pretty strictly about we just need more money.
Oh, okay.
We just need a
There
bigger
was no
piece of the pie.
AI.
Nobody was talking
There was
about
no streaming.
Nobody was talking about artificial intelligence. Nobody was worried about computers writing movie scripts. Like that was nothing that complicated was on the. Now, in some ways, I'm glad I'm not trying to report on it because it's so
It
complicated.
is complicated.
And like a lot of problems, it's hard to look at it as a black and white. Well, here are the good guys and here are the bad guys. It's so complicated now that I'm glad I'm not trying to report on it because it's a much harder job than the reporting was in 1988 on that writer's strike. Obviously, we know a lot of people who have been really damaged by the combination of the writer's strike into the actor's strike. A lot of people who work on they are not necessarily actors, they're not necessarily writers, but they are directors, they are producers, they are grips, they're electricians, they're carpenters, they're set designers, costumers, and
After
those
the
people
writer's
are not
strike,
working.
How many days has it been?
Oh my,
3
That's
almost months?
4 months, I
4
think.
months.
Yeah, maybe more than that. So a lot of those people have, they lost their,
Did your kids ever get involved in the studios or?
No.
They went on their separate careers?
they did their separate careers when they were both adorable. Well, they're adorable now, but they were adorable when they were little children. And people would say, wow, why don't you put your kids in
Yeah.
movies? And I would say, because I love them. I don't want them in the entertainment industry. That's an awful industry. I was covering, I was looking at the dark side of it all the time, so I didn't want to have anything to do with
Right,
that.
right.
No, they did other things. They both ended up, now. They're running galleries. They both are very deeply embedded into the
Art.
LA art scene. That's not what they did.
You said they were moving back.
They've all moved back, they both moved back here. They had been in the Bay Area for a long time, and they decided that they saw more opportunity here. I don't really know why this is, but a lot of their cohort, kids who had lived in Brooklyn, they had lived in Seattle, they had lived in Berlin, they lived in Mexico City, they all started to come back here. Like there was a lot going on.
A lot of their friends?
Yeah, a lot of young people, because there was a lot going on in music, there was a lot going on in art. This had become a sort of a vital place in a way that it hadn't been 20 years before. So a lot of them moved back here. So when they didn't have to sacrifice much when they moved back to Los Angeles, because so many of the people that they were close to were living here and working.
Great.
So very good for us as the parents, because we loved the Bay Area and we liked going up there a lot, but we couldn't just invite them to, we couldn't look at the watch and say, why don't we get the kids to come, call them on the phone, what are you doing for dinner tonight, what are you doing for breakfast?
Did they actually physically move here?
Yeah.
Oh, so they could afford it recently?
Yeah, we found,
That's amazing.
they found housing that, made sense, and then they found jobs that paid them well, and,
That's great.
that they are really satisfied by. I think one of them might end up here, ultimately. A few years ago, we started thinking, we don't really need a big house anymore, and besides that, this is not a good house to be an old person in, because it's steep down to the street, and there's just stairs everywhere you go. The sunken living room, you gotta go up the stairs to the bedroom.
You're not in an actual wheelchair.
Oh yeah, I should say, yes, this is an artifact.
This is
This is an artifact. I have never used a wheelchair.
I should put you in this chair.
No, it's perfectly all right. I love this chair. I bought this in an
But the
antique
whole
store.
thing about changing in your walking and your lifestyle, actually, you never did get that last operation.
I never had the third operation. I've had other things go wrong.
How's your back?
It's fantastic. I never have had that level of back problems since then. And I'm sure it's because of the walking, which, I don't know that will solve everybody's back problem, but it certainly solved mine. It certainly solved mine. Not wood, that it continues to.
And then you're gonna get another hip?
I will have my fourth hip replacement, which is my second revision in December. Apparently I won't have to do it again after that, which would be great. The surgeries have gotten so much better. When I had my first one in 1997, it was 4 days in the hospital and months and months and months of recovery, very slow recovery, because the process was not as delicate as it is now. Now they make a much smaller incision and they can go in and do a lot of it arthroscopically. So the last time when I had the hip revision done over here, it's an outpatient surgery.
Wow.
I went in the morning, I was walking that afternoon. I wasn't walking up big hills. That was just 3 years ago. 4 years ago, 2019.
So from 97 to 2019?
Yeah, the first one lasted 22 years. And
And
all the stuff, when I had the back surgeries and when I had the hip surgeries, the doctors are more conservative maybe than they need to be. And, they said things like, yeah, that's tennis, I wouldn't. Motorcycle riding in the dirt in the desert, yeah, that's probably over for you.
Right.
Skiing, no, you can't ski. So what about snowboarding? They said, you probably can't. And I started doing all of those things. In my life, once I eliminated the pain that I had from the bad hips, I did everything.
Do anything.
I did everything.
Fantastic.
And continue to, which at my age is possibly not.
And you're only
possibly not wise.
68?
Only 68. Thank you for putting it that way.
Of course.
I'm only 68.
Listen, I'm robbing the cradle here.
No, I feel, with some of the bad health problems that I've had and the other problems that I've had, I wake up every day sort of surprised that I'm still here and very grateful to be here, to still be in pretty good health. And I think the walking has a lot to do with that, because we have the dogs. We have to walk because this one, becomes a maniac if he doesn't get some exercise.
Exactly.
So my wife usually takes the morning shift and she goes out at the break of dawn often, and she walks 2.5, 3 miles. And then I have the afternoon shift, and I go out at 4 or 5, and I walk 2.5 or 3 miles. And we both get to stay pretty fit. The dogs are healthy and happy.
Cholesterol level is completely low.
Everything,
No problem, because cholesterol,
keeps our
exercise.
weight down, it keeps us healthy, it keeps us, you know, also plugged into the neighborhood. You know, Los Angeles is not, most neighborhoods are not a get to know your neighbor neighborhood. I mean,
Yeah.
I know people, they don't really know who lives around them, and
Right.
why would they? Because they live in their house, they get in their car, they drive to their work, they come home, they get, you know, again, back to that shared space, there's not shared space. But because we walk, we see everybody. You know, this one's washing the car, and this one's taking out the trash, and this one needs help lifting something, you know, this one has a dog, this one has a cat, you know, we get to know them all, and be on a friendly basis with them, which has been very helpful for us to feel comfortable and feel part of this community, and helpful to some of the others, you know, people around here, some of them have been here a long time, they're a little bit elderly, and if they didn't know us, I don't know who they would know.
Right.
That they could call and say, listen, I need to get to the hospital, or look, I've got this tree fell down in my backyard, I don't know what to do about it. So we're able to be useful and helpful in the neighborhood.
So the
in way-
cars
in way
and
that
the
we live.
isolation and the, you know, everything you could think of that would keep people apart are really not, they're counteracted by the Silver Lake demography and the people and the diversity and just
And
the
the walking.
exercise.
The walking,
The
just
exercise.
getting out of your car,
Right.
getting out of your house, being in a public place that you share with others, you're forced to encounter people.
Right.
And in fact, I'm now very friendly with people that I didn't like at all. No, that woman, the way she parks, the way she, you know what, she's not a nice person, I don't like her at all. Well, she's terrific. She's still a terrible driver, but I don't know her that way.
Yeah.
I know her, how are you this afternoon, what's going on? Oh my goodness, look at your pomegranates, do you want some? Oh,
Yeah.
please, yes, you know.
Yeah.
We have that kind of a relationship now, and she's still a terrible driver, but I don't think of her as a terrible driver. I think of her as the
Yeah.
really nice woman that lives over there by the stairs, you know. And I have that feeling about a lot of people here, that
Right.
otherwise it would just be, yeah, I don't know who lives there. You know, some guy who drives a BMW, and I've never seen him before, you know, it's just, I don't know, the car's there and he must live there, but, you know, who knows? And if we were just in our houses and in our cars, you
Right.
know, we don't have front porches here, people don't sit out at
No.
night and wave to their neighbors as
And
they
we're
go
on a
by.
hill.
And we're on a hill, and so,
You
But-
gotta do something to counteract that,
yeah,
yeah.
so that's been our solution.
And that with
Nice
the
solution.
difference in the people coming here is kind of helpful as far as the future of Silver Lake. Because I mean, I don't know anybody that can afford Silver Lake, you know, as far as now, I mean, it's kind of expensive.
Oh, well, my wife and I joked that if we didn't own a house here, we could never afford to live
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
If we hadn't, you know, we paid off our house some years ago, so we
We're all
can
moms,
afford it.
millionaires on paper.
That's right, I never heard that expression, yeah.
But it's the
Indeed.
best, wonderful place to live, and if you can, to just keep going, keep hanging in there and participate in the community. You know, it's just.
Love it, you know, people do complain, especially some of the old timers complain about the gentrification and how, oh, old Seafood Bay, I loved
I know,
old
it's
Seafood
gone.
Bay, and Senor Goya, the Cuban place. Those places were great, but look what's come to replace it. So many interesting places to eat,
Yeah.
so
And
many
they are-
fascinating
there-
shops.
There are a couple of chains, but there are pretty much mom and pop stuff still happening too.
A lot of it,
A lot of it,
A
I'm
lot of it.
surprised. I mean, from Ozzy Dots and the soap plant, we
right?
can, you know, I don't know how many Plaza Gelatos are. But
Well, just the
Sure.
one, and it's,
That
you
one.
know, it's,
Well,
I think they're going out of business.
they put the sweet and salty next to it, and I think that the contract for them meant that they could only have so many ice cream, but they're working it out. They say they're working it
I
out.
think Pazzo Gelato, I mean, I've spent a lot of time in Italy.
Yeah.
I've eaten a lot of gelato.
Yeah.
I swear the best ice cream I've ever eaten,
Nobody's gonna
comes
let
down
them
the-
close.
I won't let them close. I've been investing heavily, literally, because I want to keep them in business. Please don't go away, because I don't know anything else that's quite that good.
So it is pretty unique, but I guess it's like your friend with the croissants. The last question I'd ask you is like, what would it take, like, when the Gap moves here or something? Would that be the end of it, or? we'll have to move here before you go. It's over.
My situation is rather different from some people's. You know, people say, ugh, Los Angeles. I mean, I will meet people and they'll say, where are you from? And I say, I'm from Los Angeles. And they say, oh, sorry. Because they think it's crowded, the terrible traffic, the parking, I was there, I couldn't find a parking place, and God, it's so expensive and all of that. All of that's true. It has almost no impact on my life. Because I don't live in Los Angeles. I live in Silver Lake. I spend most of my time here. I don't commute for work anymore.
Yeah.
So we walk down to the farmer's market. We walk down to the market. We take our walk and we go around and we meet people. Like, if somebody wants to meet me for coffee, I say, well, great, I'll meet you down at, name one of the 18 coffee shops that are within walking distance. And so none of those things that people complain about affects me very much, or affects us. And because we're on a hill, the weather's always a little nicer. There's always a breeze. It's a little cooler. At night, we can see planes landing or coming into land and landing at LAX. I mean, we can see the ocean from our front porch. It's great.
Life couldn't be better.
It couldn't be better. It probably could be, but when people say, you should sell your house and move, I think, well, first of all, then I would have to buy another house. And second of all, where would I go?
Exactly.
There's certainly no place in Southern California that I would rather live. No place that suits us better, that it's so close to everything, so easy to get to everything, so close to so many interesting things. And people say, like, well, wouldn't you like to live in Malibu? Well, yeah, Malibu's nice if you really love the beach. But then where can you go from Malibu? Like, say you want to go to the onsen.
Right.
Like, you got to go a day early and book a room. You want to go to really interesting restaurants. Well, there's what's there in Malibu, but everything else is so far away. So I think it's an ideal place to live. And again, it's just accident, we just needed a cheaper place to live than Los Feliz. And
I
this
wouldn't
is where we
downsize
landed.
from here. My motto is they're gonna take me out of my house, toes up.
Well, you know what we've
And
done?
I've got 3 bedrooms and 2.5 bedrooms.
This has been our solution. We decided we might need an old people house. And we had a little money that we weren't using. So Julie, my wife, said, here's what it is. It's gotta be flat lot, no more than 3 stairs up to the front door, no more than, I can't remember, like 50 feet to the street. It has to be within a half a mile of a supermarket. It has to be within a quarter of a mile of some kind of rapid transit, like a bus. And I said, well, that seems like a really tall order, but I'll start looking around. And we bought a house in Pasadena.
Okay.
That would be very suitable for us as older people than we are now, when the stairs have just become too challenging for us. And at one point we thought about maybe, well, we'll sell this place. And my daughters went nuts. They said, are you out of your mind? You're not selling that place. That's our house. So I think this is going to be where one of them lives, and they'll get to have the experience that we've had at Silver Lake and continue into middle age and old age, hopefully.
And their kids, and I have great grandkids.
Yeah, bring it on.
Yeah, exactly.
It's still a great place to be.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna change much even. It'll change, but it'll always have the good parts too.
Well, that's been our experience so far, right? It's changed and it's gotten worse in some ways, but so much better in so many other ways that it's still the best deal in town.
Right. Can you sign my book? You promised to give me?
I would be delighted to do that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the interview.
Well, it's my pleasure. The stairs thing has been such an interesting experience because, as I said, I didn't expect anybody to buy it, really. And I certainly didn't expect to make any money off of it. And I haven't made very much money off of it because, the publisher gets his big piece and the retailer gets a big piece. But where I have been paid, I have gotten hundreds of emails over the years, over the 13 years since this book was published, hundreds of emails from people saying, I want to thank you for writing Secret Stairs. I started walking the stairs, I lost 40 pounds, and I'm dating for the first time in 10 years. Or, my wife and I started walking the stairs every Saturday night, we were in love again. Or, I've lived in this neighborhood 40 years, I didn't even know that park was there. Like people whose experience of living in Los Angeles has really grown and changed just because of this little book. And it's immensely gratifying,
Are
obviously.
you aware of, there's a certain night every week that everybody meets at tomato,
Oh, that walk has been going
Tomato-
on, yeah. Tomato pie,
Tomato pie,
yeah.
and they go. I mean, is
Yeah.
it Thursday nights?
I don't remember,
It
it's
used to
Tuesday or
be
Thursday,
Tuesday.
but,
But they'll take a different stair and they have
yeah,
different.
they've been doing that for
They've
years
been
and
doing
years
that
and
for
years.
years.
And you know, for many years, I led a first Sunday of the month free walk, and I would pick a walk and I would tell everybody, okay, we're gonna meet at this corner, and we're gonna go for a walk. It started out being me and my wife and 2 or 3 people, and then it was 10 people, it was 20 people, then it was like, what are all these people doing here? When we stopped at the time of the pandemic, there were 120 people coming, and we were just a mob walking through, and a lot of the people would say, oh, I love your book, me and my girlfriends go out every Sunday morning, or me and my wife and kids, we go every Friday night, we go and we take a walk. So it's had a real impact on people's lives, a positive impact on people's lives in a way that I had no idea that would happen. And it's
Absolutely.
very gratifying. That's better than making any money. right?
Feels good.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
All right, I'm signing your book now.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Entirely my pleasure. I'm so glad we did this today.
I'm glad we all got together, all the planets aligned. We did it. I've been wanting to do it for 16 years since Bob said, hey, I have a friend named Charles up there, someday why don't you interview him? I said, okay, I'll work on it.
Well, I'm delighted to think that one day I'll be in the archives and officially be a part of Silver
Yeah,
Lake.
and your kids and your grandkids and your great-grand, they can all look it up on YouTube too, so through this Silver Lake History Collective. So thank you so much, Charles.
Thank you for doing it.
Delightful. Thank you.
And thank you.
Thank you.